those of you that weren't in the room, my name is Ryan J. Salva. I'm a program manager at Microsoft responsible for building mobile tools. So specifically, that means cross-platform mobile tools within the Microsoft ecosystem, not just for building Windows apps. For those of you that know and love Windows apps, we also enable developers to build iOS and Android apps through technologies like Cordova, Xamarin, React Native, NativeScript, all those lovely, lovely web technologies that most of us here feel most comfortable in. I'm here today because Sandeep and I met each other at Build conference a few months back and started talking about the possibility of bringing Sencha extension to VS Code. And so our teams collaborated a little bit and have brought you early access to a VS Code plugin for XJS. Announced the other day at the keynote, and today we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into it and also talk a little bit more about how you can take your web development skills to build mobile applications to build delivered as native packages to iOS, Android, Windows, BlackBerry, and whatever your other third, fourth operating system of choice happens to be. Sound like fun? All right. Cool. So the agreement that I make with all of my audiences, especially audiences in nice, comfy rooms like this, is that you are encouraged to interrupt me as we go along, right? We're all technology enthusiasts in the room. We're all friendly folks. So if we start to go into any subject where you're like, I'm not really sure what's going on here, raise your hand, interrupt me. Let's talk about it. Let's geek out and learn something about the technology. Sound good? Excellent. All right, cool. So I was going to want to start by setting the stage for the opportunity around mobile development. So this particular graph here comes from a Vision Mobile survey from earlier this year. And it was taking a look at all of the different kind of development platforms and target devices for enterprise and professional developers. So 42% of professional developers are building mobile apps today. That shouldn't come as a surprise to many of us since mobile devices are such an important part of our lives. But that's kind of the developer base at large. If you were to compare that down, or you just kind of narrow that down to just enterprise developers, only about 17 of enterprise developers are really invested in building mobile apps. And what that says to me is that enterprises are kind of a little bit behind where the rest of the consumer market is. Now, some of you may be familiar with this technology adoption curve. Who's seen this before? Yeah, a few hands on the, all right, cool. So the technology adoption curve was first proposed by a professor over at the Chicago, one of the Chicago schools. And it essentially says that as a technology comes into the market, it follows a natural path. You've got your innovators there on the far left. These are the people who are extremely risk tolerant. They're just out there blazing trails and burning fires, and they don't care what sort of destruction they leave in their path, right? They're just there to break things and to create. Not too far beyond that, you've got early adopters. Early adopters are those who are also risk tolerant, right? But only want to work with technologies that have really kind of got a toehold. It's not until you move into the early majority and the late majority that you start to see mass adoption. Now you'll notice that there's a bit of a large white kind of stripe there in between the early adopters and the early majority. That is often referred to as the chasm, right? The chasm is difficult to cross because for a technology to mature enough to move past early adopters into early majority, it needs to achieve a level of stability, of reliability, of just sanity in order for the mass market to adopt it. Now, for mobile applications, we're clearly in late stage. Every single one of us has probably got a smartphone in our pocket. We've probably got 50 different apps and games and whatever on it. And so the consumer market is pretty far along on that. But as evidenced by the fact that only 17% of enterprise developers were working on mobile applications, what we see is that in the enterprise market, we're just there in the early majority, right? We've just crossed the chasm as enterprises start to think about how they bring their applications, all of their systems, all of their data, all their services onto mobile devices. Now, what that really means is taking all of that data that we've traditionally kept in our desktop applications and starting to democratize it or to multiply the endpoints that we reach. So this particular kind of visualization was really kind of brought to us by the folks over at Forrester Research. A guy by the name of Jeffrey Moore first proposed it, I think, about 4 years or so ago. So the foundational line of business applications, these are kind of the systems of record. These are the giant, massive databases where we're keeping all of our data and where we're warehousing it in these super secure locations, often if you're in the enterprise, on premise, right? So that you're not exposed to any nasty, scary hackers out there. But the challenge here, the challenge for enterprises is taking those super secure bunkers of data and gradually moving it out to more and more endpoints as we get to the lighter shades there. As it gets out to desktop apps, or it's already there, but maybe it gets out to tablets. Maybe it gets out to mobile devices. Maybe even you start to kind of bubble up some of that data into social networks. And here I don't mean posting it on Facebook, but maybe it goes to your Slack channels. You start to expose some of that data through Slack bots or Yammer bots, or if any of you heard about Microsoft Teams that got released a week or so ago, kind of a Slack compete, right? These social services designed to help enterprises collaborate amongst distributed teams. Getting that data out into those social networks and those kind of distributed collaboration tools can sometimes be a little bit scary. And so figuring out how you control the security of your data, how you kind of create endpoints that aren't thick endpoints with a lot of business logic built into them, but are rather thin clients that allow you to keep all of that IP that's protected in your on-premise systems at home and close to the vest today. So that's the challenge that we're faced with, and that's us as JavaScript developers need to start thinking about how we actually kind of embrace that change, embrace that democratization of information to get it out to those endpoints and still remain relevant, right? If we're moving to a mobile app economy where a lot more of the development is happening for these small little devices in our pocket, how do we as JavaScript developers remain relevant? It's super important because, as you'll see here, that kind of green line up there. So this is from a Stack Overflow survey just earlier this year. According to the Stack Overflow survey, what is this, like 55, 56% of developers are using JavaScript today. JavaScript is the dominant language used in software worldwide, right? There is a lot of skills, there's a lot of expertise, and frankly, there's a lot of time that we've invested in becoming badass JavaScript developers, right? Everyone around the room, badass JavaScript developers, a lot of time to get there, right? So, how do we do that? Well, one of the ways that a lot of developers are having success applying their JavaScript skills to mobile app development is through Cordova. Now, this has been, especially in the enterprise, tremendously successful. What you're looking at here is you're looking at a survey of tools that are being used for mobile app development and specifically cross-platform mobile app development. So these are tools that developers are using to use a shared code base to deliver to iOS, Android, Windows, and so on. Of those, PhoneGap Cordova is twice the active use of its nearest competitor, Xamarin. The blue lines here are using the tool. The green lines here are prioritizing the tool. So if given the choice, they will choose this always above anything else. All right. So clearly Cordova has got some market momentum here, and largely it's because of all those people that we saw on the previous side who are using JavaScript. Cordova allows you to continue doing that, right? So we saw the aggregate data. Who's doing it? Who's using hybrid app development, right? Untapped, a beer app, right? WeChat, that's a hybrid app. Zynga Mob Wars, game, that's a hybrid app. Swirkit, sort of a fitness exercise app, hybrid. Instagram, do you guys know that Instagram's a hybrid app, right? All those photos and all that, those are actually just a web view. That's a web view, right? Feedly, news app. Uber, that map you see there, that's actually web view, right? AT&T's customer support app. Okay, even though I sometimes get frustrated with it, still a hybrid app, right? The Apple app and bookstores, yo, hybrid, right? So yeah, like as a technology, this is working for a lot of businesses. As I was kind of going through the litany of apps there, I saw a question over here.
Oh, no, I thought you were asking who's using it.
Oh, who's using it? Okay. Well, good. I'm glad you're using it. Good work. All right. So we've established that there's a need. We've established that there's momentum behind the technology. Let's talk a little bit about what the technology is. So Apache Cordova was originally developed by the Nitobi Corporation in 2009 out of Vancouver, Canada. Little bit of kind of trivia here. It got the name Cordova because their offices were on Cordova Street in Vancouver. So those of you that go to Vancouver, go to Cordova Street, you'll see it. In 2011, it was sold to the Adobe Corporation. At that time, it was open sourced, and officially there was a split at that time between the open source project of Cordova and the brand sort of proprietary product that is PhoneGap. So many of you may hear the names Cordova and PhoneGap interchangeably. That's because they largely are interchangeable. They both use the exact same underlying platform and infrastructure. The PhoneGap brand name largely refers to the proprietary build service and customer support that's associated with it that Adobe provides today. As terms of open source project, it is supported, that is to say Cordova, is supported by some of the behemoths of the technology and software industry. Google, major player, IBM, Microsoft, Adobe, Intel. All of these corporations are investing massive resources to make sure that Cordova is a stable, reliable, enterprise-ready platform. Now, from a technology perspective, what's really happening here is that your JavaScript app is a full screen web view. That is to say that when you open up an app, everything that you see on your screen is kind of like an embedded browser, right? Hence the ability to reuse all of your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript skills, right? Because it's an embedded browser, that allows you to use a single shared code base across all of the different deployment targets, iOS, Android, Windows, and on down the line. You can, if you so desire, kind of fork it and have slightly different code paths for iOS, Android, and Windows. But most developers, in order to realize the highest cost savings, end up using the same code across all deployment targets. Now, just because you're inside of a browser, inside of a kind of a web view, that doesn't mean that you lack access to native device capabilities. One of the primary reasons that we as developers choose to deliver our app via Cordova rather than just from a browser, well, one, we want to have offline support. That's pretty important, right? But we also want to have access to native device capabilities, like the camera, the accelerometer, access to the address book, right? Any of those things that you would be able to do with a normal native applications, you still get with Cordova by virtue of these things called plugins. Plugins essentially expose the native device APIs to your web view via a common JavaScript API. And let's stop and think about what I mean by that, by a common JavaScript API. That means that instead of having to write, 20 lines of code to access the camera on iOS, and then a slightly different set of lines to access the camera on Android, like you would have to do if you were building a separate app for iOS and Android using Swift or Objective-C in Java. Instead, you have a common JavaScript API that exposes and kind of normalizes or abstracts away the differences between the platforms. So you can just say, camera, get picture, and your one line of JavaScript is the equivalent of many lines in the native languages. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right, cool. So just to give you an idea about kind of what kind of representation that gets in the app stores, well, about 6% of consumer apps, near as we can tell, are hybrid apps or Cordova apps, and about 13% of enterprise apps are Cordova apps. It is a little bit difficult to know what the actual penetration is, especially in the enterprise, because so many enterprise apps are delivered via sideloading or private stores rather than through the public app stores. So there's a bit of it's not a dark web, dark app store. I don't know. Whatever the right word for that is. Yeah. All right. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about the build systems, especially as it relates back to your Sencha XJS applications. So this capability is already built into XJS, and it works a little bit like this. So you're going to create your app. You guys are already experts at doing that. You know how to build your apps, right? And you're going to do that with your HTML, your CSS, your JavaScript. You're going to maybe borrow a little bit from some of the other tools in the Sencha ecosystem. You'll borrow from Architect and Themer and Stencil and all that good kind of stuff. Now, within that, you are then going to do a Sencha build, right? And we'll show you how this works, like, really at the command line in a few minutes. But you use Sencha command, you'll do a build, and what that's going to do is that's going to output a Cordova project into your workspace, okay? Now, you may have seen this before. If you've added that as one of the possible deployment targets, you'll get a little Cordova subdirectory within your workspace. All right, well, now you've got a Cordova project. That Cordova project is essentially going to farm out to each one of the platform SDKs. It'll farm out to Visual Studio to build a Windows app. It'll farm out to Xcode to build an iOS app. It will farm out to Android Studio in order to build an Android app, right? Cordova's job is essentially to create these native projects and then execute the build so that what you get out of the end is a native application, native Windows app, and since it's a UWP or Universal Windows app, that means it can go to Xbox, it can go to desktop, it can go to a Windows Phone, it can go to any of those places. Technically speaking, you can even create a HoloLens app with the Cordova app. I have not tried to create a XJS HoloLens app yet, but I'll let you know how it works out when I do. Or, iOS and Android. Cool. So does that make sense as like a build process, how that works? Yeah? Head nodding? Good. All right. So all of this today is we're gonna kind of use as our development environment in Visual Studio Code. For those of you that have not already used it, it's a code editor. It's a really wicked fast code editor. It's built on Electron, just like many of the Sencha tools are, and it supports just about any language that UTF-8 supports. I mean, it's out there for Go, it's out there for Java, it's out there for C#, and essentially it's got a massive ecosystem of extensions that are built up around it to optimize for different workflows and different frameworks. And so what we've done and what we've released this week is an optimization specifically for your XJS apps. In terms of momentum, Art said this the other day at his keynote, 2 million downloads, and that was as of April of this last year. Confidentially, we're going to announce some new statistics in the next week or so, and let's just say that number is maybe doubled about. I had some hands over here, yeah.
So, as a developer, I use regular Visual Studio or Visual Studio Professional.
Yeah.
How does Visual Studio Code fit into my workflow?
Yeah, great question. So for those of you that couldn't hear it, this gentleman over here is a he's an awesome Visual Studio professional developer. And he's wondering how VS Code fits into his workflow. The answer is that, well, from a Sencha perspective and an XJS perspective, there's an extension for Visual Studio Professional as well. So you've got your choice between VS Code or Visual Studio Professional. All of the same functionality with some slight variances can be found in both of them. I personally prefer VS Code for most of my JavaScript development because I find that Visual Studio as an IDE is like the cockpit of a 747, right? There are so many buttons and things to do, and not all of them are immediately relevant to what I'm doing inside of my JavaScript application. And so I use Visual Studio Code as a lightweight text editor that allows me to focus just on my JavaScript workflows. And when I say lightweight, I mean, for those of you that have tried to install Visual Studio before, it's a massive beast. It's multiple gigabytes, right? Visual Studio Code is about 50 megabytes, so much faster startup. And Visual Studio Code is cross-platform. Because it's an Electron app, it works on Mac, it works on Linux, it works on Windows. Today, at least, Visual Studio is a Windows-only application. And so if you want to go to other kind of operating systems, VS Code is a great way to get there and get a lot of the same, but not all of the same features in VS Code. Does that make sense? Awesome. Great. Okay, cool. So with that, I want to kind of bring up the man responsible for architecting and really kind of innovating with the code plugin, the XJS plugin. Ladies and gentlemen, Sandy.
Yeah, thanks. You guys can hear me? Yeah, so Ron, great start to the talk.
Totally.
And thanks for coming to this CenturyCon, your first CenturyCon?
My first CenturyCon, and I wouldn't miss the next one for the world.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I'm a product manager at Sencha. I've been responsible for creating many of the tools that hopefully many of you are using. Since last CenturyCon, we launched Stencils, Architect, new version, launched Inspector, Themer, different plugins, and I'm really excited about Visual Studio Code plugin. You know, the art yesterday announced 1,000 more customers in the Sencha family. That there are more than 85,000 downloads for all of XJS tools since last CenturyCon. But I think the Visual Studio Code is going to surpass that because Visual Studio Code is going to be available in Standard, Pro, and Premium. You know, so the Visual Studio Code plugin architecture is going to use the Turn.js. So those who have used Eclipse as well as Visual Studio IDE, they know that there's a process that we offer which is not exposed to the developers, but it uses whatever XJS provides and use that as a language definition server. So it basically goes and looks at your application, looks at your framework, and construct a definition that the plugin uses to provide the IntelliSense and code completion.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is, when I'm using the Visual Studio Code plugin, I've got the same shared services that are provided in my WebStorm plugin, my Eclipse plugin, my Visual Studio one.
Yeah, WebStorm is a little bit different because
Okay.
WebStorm we started development early and we created kind of customized version for them.
I
And then we
see.
realized, okay, this is something we can standardize. And from that time onwards, for any new plugin, Eclipse, Visual Studio, and now Code, we have it standardized on
So
Turn.js.
you're saying the VS Code one's better?
This is going to be better. Yeah.
All right, I'm teasing him. I'm teasing him. All right. Cool. All right. So we got shared architecture between all of them.
Yeah, and
That's helpful.
then Sencha command is a build tool that you can use across these plugins and provides all the build functionality.
All right. All right. Cool. All right. So you said works across all the different packages,
Yeah,
right? Which is
yeah.
good. Supports XJS 4 plus.
4 plus,
4
yeah.
plus
support.
non-minified versions, right?
Yep.
And I heard a lot of grumbling and hand raising about the upgrade experience. I think at the keynote the other day, no upgrade required.
Yeah, when you upgrade the frameworks, the way the Visual Studio Code plugin works, it looks at your classes, custom classes, frameworks, and after opening, it gets all the information.
It usually does an analysis of your code.
Yeah, it does the analysis of the code. So upgrading a framework, you don't need to download the plugin again,
Okay.
or new version of plugin.
So it can respond to your code at whatever stage you're at.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool.
You have unminified versions, so if I make a build from SysMath, then I cannot import those to the.
Yeah, for development, I would hope you'll use the non-minified version and have all the IntelliSense code completion support. And when you go to production, when you want to actually deploy it, then you use the non-minified.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Cool. So we're going to go through 6 different features here. We're going to talk a little bit about IntelliSense, code generation. We'll talk about code navigation. We'll talk about debugging, go into documentation. Some of the stuff you saw in the keynote the other day, but even more and even deeper, right? So let's do it. Let's code. Let's actually get into the product and use it, not just from a VS Code perspective, but from a mobile perspective, right?
Yep.
So we're going to start where every great project starts, you know, file new, essentially, right? So for most of us, when we begin our XJS app, we're probably going to begin and we're using Sencha command, right, to kind of build out your workspace and start to scaffold it up. Now, that's great. It's good that that tool is there, but it would be a little bit nicer if you didn't have to jump between tools and you could just do that from within your editor itself, right? So that's exactly what we're going to do. We've just opened up Visual Studio Code here. Notice, lightweight, not a lot of distractions. But we've already installed the Sencha extension. And in that, you'll see towards the bottom of the context menu there, we got a bunch of Sencha-specific options that are available to us. We're going to start by scaffolding out a workspace. In this case, we're going to build a modern app. So let's go ahead and do that. And you know what? So that they can see what's going on behind the scenes, can you open up the output panel?
Yep.
I'll let you go through the step 1, 2, 3 if you want. There we go. So VS Code will give complete transparency to any of the node processes that are happening kind of behind the scenes. So what we're doing here is we're actually invoking a node process with Sencha command. And you'll see here that Sandeep's got a couple of kind of like a little wizard that we're going through. We're naming the app. We're kind of giving it a location where to place the workspace. And we're telling it where the location of our SDK is so that it can reference back to a common SDK as necessary. So here we are.
Okay,
Give it a name.
Yeah, let me start. Modern app, I need to make sure the starter. I need to give the correct XJS framework location, and I believe it is in VS Code.
Okay.
Let me just make sure
Yeah,
that's the
confirm
right.
you get the right spot. That's important.
All right, it's in the VS Code. All right, so that's correct. And then you select the theme. How about
All right.
material?
I like material theme. Let's do it. Okay, so there you see in the output pane there, we're kind of going through the steps here, and this is all the same, this is the exact same process. Essentially, we're invoking Sencha command here in order to do this. So we've got all the output streaming out there, and you'll see that over in our Project Explorer there, that you'll start to kind of get some of the folder and the directory structure to fill out for us. Brilliant, there it is. Copied it all over. We've got our workspace created. Okay, so from here, we've got a kind of your standard starter project. Let's start up a watch,
Yep.
right? So for that, we're gonna, again, not go to our command line, but we're just gonna stay within the editor itself, and we're gonna invoke the watch from the context menu. Once we do that, out of the output pane, we're gonna grab the location where we can kind of bring into our browser. Usually that's at what, 1841 is the port usually?
Yeah,
Something
yeah.
like that. Hopefully today it's at the same one.
It's still trying to index the file. So that's the part where it takes the application, looks at the framework, start indexing.
Yeah, so let's actually call attention to that. Oh, it's done with
done.
the indexing now.
Yeah.
So good thing to point out here, in the bottom left-hand corner of your IDE, of your editor, that blue stripe, right now it says stop app watch. A moment ago, it was saying indexing 38%, 52%, whatever. That's kind of your status bar to let you know what's going on in the background thread. When it was indexing, that was turn.js indexing our project, right? Okay, so we've got our watch started up here. Let's kind of jump into some of the actual code and see kind of some of the productivity accelerators that are available to us as we're editing.
Yeah.
All right, so from here, let's see here. I want to go over to main.js. So from within here, let's just add like a little tab to the bottom of our app. It's already a little kind of a mobile app. We're going to add a little tab to the bottom for, I don't know, unicorns. Let's add a tab for unicorns, okay? All right, so as Sandeep is going through here, I want you guys to watch how our IntelliSense is bringing up all the different options that are available to us. So that IntelliSense is completely contextual to your project, to where you're at within your project. It can be invoked at any time by hitting Control Space, or just as you're typing along, it's going to give us lots of options. So Sandeep has called it unicorn. We're going to give it a type. Cool, we're going to panel, all right. So with that panel, we're probably going to want to have, on the title bar there, we're going to want to have some icons.
Some icon there, yeah.
Let's add in some icons. But you know what? As we're adding in icons, I do not remember any of the font awesome. Do you guys remember any of the font awesome icons, sort of ish? All right, well, let's use our documentation function here in order to jump quickly to that. So we've got the icon property triggered. We're going to hit F1. We're going to get over to our documentation. All right, it contextually brings us up to the documentation for the icon property. And from within there, if I'm not mistaken, yep, there's a link there to the Font Awesome library. It's going to be so cool. Does Font Awesome have a unicorn emoji or icon? God, I hope so. I really, really hope so.
How about you just use asterisk?
Okay, we'll use the asterisk. I had my heart set on a unicorn. Say what? What good is a font without a unicorn? I completely agree. I recently changed my, you can have your signature for mobile phone. I changed it to sent by emoji for unicorn because I'm a 13-year-old girl, I guess. I don't know. All right, cool. So now we got the last of it in. All right, all that should be good to go, yeah? So from here, what would it be like to actually kind of navigate around and kind of get a look at kind of where the rest of our code is? So from here, I would love to be able to jump around to other parts of the document and kind of like get a better feel for what's available. So for this, VS Code provides kind of baked into it some of the same productivity gestures that if you're a Visual Studio developer, you may already be familiar with, right? So you can, do we have it? Yeah, there's our unicorn tab with an asterisk. All right, it's our, oh wow, I was going to make a Kurt Vonnegut joke there. So, for those of you that know Kurt Vonnegut, you would have gotten that. All right. All right, so main list. We're going to use our code navigation features. So from here, we can right-click, and we can say, you know what? I wonder what this main list is like. Let's peek that definition. So this is super cool. I always get kind of giddy when this happens. I don't know why I'm excited by this feature so much. It essentially opens up like a space hole time warp thing to our other document, right? That gives us a view into that file's definition. And from here, we can even make edits directly within it. So if you wanted to add a comment, for example, you could. While he's adding the comment, I had a question right here.
Yeah, can you tell me what kind of coffee you're drinking this morning?
It is premium Aria blend.
Hey, we should have more spin check on speaker like him, right?
All right, everyone's staying with me though, right? Fast enough that I'm keeping, all right, good. I like to keep the folks entertained, right? All right, so we have peak definition, but that just opens a little window into our document. If we actually want to get to the document itself to kind of stretch our legs, do some real coding, then we're just going to right-click and go to definition. And that'll jump us right on over to it. The beauty of this is that this works for anything that IntelliSense works on. We can do all of these code navigations and productivity things directly within those objects, those classes, and those variables. And that allows you, especially in an app where maybe you haven't been the one who's been working on that project. Maybe you haven't worked on it in 3 months. Maybe some other junior developer down the hall who has bad coding habits and has been working on this project, and you don't know how to navigate around their spaghetti code. Being able to do things like peak definition, go to definition, and kind of get IntelliSense all around your project helps you have a much better view of kind of what the shape of that code looks like and how you can actually be effective in the hour that you've got to fix a bug, right? All right, cool. Anything else you want to show here?
No, I think let's continue with the presentation.
Okay, all right, let's keep on going. So I was talking about like walking into someone else's code. Let's do that. Most of us don't spend our days working on, empty blank project. We spend our days working on a project that has been around for months or years, right? Work on, as they say in the industry, a brownfield project, right? So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to work on a brownfield project. And in this particular case, we're going to work on the SenchaCon app. Most people here have the SenchaCon app already installed? Yeah? Okay. For those of you that don't, let's take a quick look at the SenchaCon app. You want to bring it by?
Yeah. So I have the SenchaCon app on my phone. Let's try to see if I can show it up here. Find devices. Yeah.
So we're just using for this a little Chrome extension called Visor. And Sandeep's got it on his really fancy Android phone.
I hope it shows up. Let me restart.
Chrome's got to restart, do its little thing. That's okay.
Launch.
We're just going to kind of take a quick little tour of the SenchaCon app for those of you that aren't already familiar with it, so you know at least the basic look at what we're dealing with. It's a conference app. As you might imagine, there's a schedule, there's a calendar, there's maps and things like that. It's your standard conference app.
All right, this is not a Sencha product, so I can't
Yeah.
vouch for it.
We can blame Visor on that. We'll give it one more try. If that one doesn't work, I think most of these people have seen a conference app before, so we can skip it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I think most people nodded their head when they said they had the app installed, right? So it's a conference app. All right, so let's wander into the code where the real action's happening.
I wonder if I can show it through the inspect feature of Chrome.
You can try that too.
Okay, I think let's continue and I'll see if.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to go into the app itself. So one of the things that is great about web development, truly great about web development, is when you screw up, you can just post a hotfix to the server and pretend it never happened, right? No, not a problem, bug fixed, right? And so your customers, your employees, whoever's using that app doesn't really have to worry about like things going wrong. You are able to respond quickly, and that ultimately improves customer satisfaction. Well, who here has actually deployed a mobile app before? Actually gone out to the App Store and done it? All right, a few of you, not a lot, a few, that's all right, good. So I don't know about you, but my experience when I deployed an app was that, okay, Google Play Store, that was pretty quick. It wasn't too bad. It was like a day or two of work. When I went to the iOS store, good God alive, man. Like 10 days before that sucker gets out there, right? And okay, that's fine the first time that you want to deploy. Maybe your go live date just gets pushed back a little bit. But what if that app gets out there and you've got a bug in it? It's a crashing bug. And you're getting 1-star reviews, right? And that's tanking your business. That's screwing with your income and with your revenue. Or heck, even if it's an enterprise app and it's being distributed through as a line of business app, right? That means that you've got employees and partners out there who are really frustrated because they can't get their job done. And my bet is that your ass is going to be on the line because of that bug, right? So if you are gated by the App Store, that can be a real kind of blocker or hindrance to your success as an IT department and as a developer. So one of the unique advantages that JavaScript applications like Cordova have over native applications developed via Objective-C, Swift, or Java is that they can be dynamically updated without being gated by the app stores. Yes, your first deployment has to go through all the normal gateways. But after that, because you have got JavaScript that's running, right, that is providing all of the business logic, and in the case of Cordova, also your UI as well, you are exempt from the kind of those gateways. You can update on demand. One of the kind of more popular services that are used for that is a service called Code Push. And it's a completely free service. It happens to be built by my team, but I am kind of not lying when I say that it is one of the most popular ones. Let me explain a little bit how it works. All right, so after you've done that Sencha build, right, then you're going to go to your command line and push an update to the Code Push service, right? And that's done via Code Push release Cordova app name. Oh, I've got authority to advance here. Okay, so once that happens, that package, all of your JavaScript, right? All your JavaScript, HTML, and CSS goes up to the cloud. Once it's up there in the cloud, all the devices that are out there in the world do a little query and say, hey, cloud, what's up? You got an update for me? Cloud says, yeah, bro, I'm good. I got an update for you. Let's do this. So it sends down a zip. There you go. Now it's updated, and you've got that bug fixed, that new feature pushed out, right? Any of the advancements or enhancements that you want to make to your app. Now, I said that this was the real deal, and this is allowed and legit by the Apple Store. This is an actual excerpt from the Apple Developer Agreement, wherein it says it. And the key kind of sentence here is about midway through. The only exception to the foregoing is scripts and code downloaded and run by Apple's built-in WebKit framework or JavaScript core. That, ladies and gentlemen, is your permission to dynamically update all of your app, right? That's the permission that you needed in order to use a service like this and gain the agility that you need to make updates at the same cadence that you make updates to your web applications. Used by thousands and thousands of apps already today, so you know it's legit. All right, let's get back to the code.
Awesome. So while you're presenting, I just relaunched Chrome, and just to make sure it shows the app. So the app is here, and you can see the menu. So currently the app we added one more. This is the same app that you have, except we are making some changes. So there is a check for updates menu here, and that's the menu we just added so that we can call code push.
Yep. All right. Cool. So you know that we got a Senchicon app, extra button. All right. So let's get into the code itself. We're going to go back to our project. Actually, this is our first time opening up the Senchicon project.
Yeah. So we're going to open that Senchicon app.
All right. Now immediately you're going to see that this is a much larger project. So brownfield project. And to this one, we're going to make a change so that we can show code push and work and so that we can highlight some of the other cool things you can do in VS Code. Now we saw earlier that you can scaffold an entire project by creating a workspace. Now this time around, we're going to do, a little something more common, a little more everyday, which is we're going to scaffold out a new class and a new view. So again, we're going to right click and we're going to say create XJS class. In this particular case, we're going to create a view. And when we create that view, what do you want to call this guy?
Senchicon grid.
Senchicon grid. Oh, hey, we're going to add in one of those fancy grids you guys got. All right, that's cool. All right, so now we've got this grid in there. We've just kind of created the basic scaffolding for your typical view. Now we're going to make use of another VS Code feature. We want to sort of airlift a giant piece of code into here. Well, for this, we're going to make use of code snippets. Code snippets are exactly what you'd expect they are. I'm sure you're familiar with them from other IDEs. In this case, we're going to add in a code snippet, which we've called metric.
Metric, yeah.
This is a giant code dump of a big grid, right? But this one, we have not done the work to actually format it properly. Creating an opportunity for ourselves here. So in this case, to make that code all pretty, we're going to right-click in the document area. We're going to say Format Document. And it's instantly going to do all the nice tabbing and spacing that we want on it so that it makes it a little bit more legible and quickly kind of updates our document. All right, so now we've actually got this guy in here. We're going to need to create a navigation item to get to this screen. So you've already just kind of comment out that guy. And this is going to add another menu item to our swipe out menu, our code menu, right? All right, cool. Did that get everything for us?
Yeah, I think that's
it?
That's good. So
right.
we added a piece of code, JavaScript code, and let's see if we can get that onto my phone.
All right, love it. So step one, Sencha build.
Yeah. All right, so let me go. So this is the Senchicon application directory here. What you need to do is, of course, since you made the change, you want to build the project. And since it's a native project, you want to use Sencha app build native. As you know, the native is a build config, and you can see that in the app.json file here. The native build config here. And it is using package of Cordova, and the platform is Android because we want to get it on the Android phone.
All right.
And this is doing the Sencha command doing its magic.
Builds are like the least sexy part of any demo on stage. You're just kind of going to stand there and be like, yep, there's the command line.
Yep.
Spooling out.
Set up the build within VS Code. Kind of set up that command.
Yeah, actually, that one is available today via the command palette. Now, because on this particular one, we're adding in some extra parameters and options to it. It was not pre-canned in the extension, but you can set up your own customized build tasks within the user preferences file within VS Code. If you like, I'm happy to point you to the documentation afterwards. It's pretty easy to find on the VS Code website, though. And you can even, like, let's say that you've got gulp tasks that you use, or grunt tasks that you use, or any one of those other task management tools. You can even create your own tasks for those and invoke those directly from within VS Code as well. All right, was our build successful?
Yeah, so there's a Cordova folder here, just got updated with the new code that we added. Let's go in the Cordova folder.
Yep.
And let's use the magic of code push.
All right, so remember when we showed the kind of the workflow before, it was a Sencha build, then it was a Cordova build, and then that went out to Visual Studio, Android Studio, Xcode to do the builds. In this case, because the native package has already been installed on his device, we don't have to do the native build again. We only needed that JavaScript build to happen. So what we're going to do is we're uploading the output, the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript output of our Sencha build that went into our Cordova folder, and now we're going to zip that up and put that in Azure. Once it's in Azure, then our devices can query it, say, do you have an update, and pull down the zip.
So
while you're talking, it's super small, but hopefully people can read it. It had upload progress, and that was it uploading to Azure right there. So now our zip file is up in the cloud. Now we should be able to update.
We should be able to. So
all right.
let's go
in
the
app.
app.
The magic squirrels of the interweb have.
Yeah. So right now we don't have that menu here,
around.
right? So let's go and check for updates.
Check for update.
Make sure clear here, and click on the check for update. So it's saying downloading update. I don't know whether people can see that.
Can people see it in the console? It's a little small, it's a little tiny, but you should be able to see in the output window of Chrome there that it's downloading an update. Now, usually you would want that update to happen at a convenient time for your users, right? You would want it to happen maybe the next time the app starts up or the next time the app resumes. Because we wanted to optimize for this demo, we had it immediately update, immediately upon clicking check for update. So, update is happening there. Is it restarting?
Let's see. Let's go back and inspect the app, and okay, it's there. Let's see.
All right.
All right. There is this menu here, Sencha Metrics. Right. You guys can see it here.
Second one from the bottom. Let's click on it, and now we've got a grid in there. So. We went through the entire web publishing process for a native packaged application, right? Now, the super cool thing is that, would you mind here, let's go back to the code, and let's go into, I believe it's main.js. And let's do a search for code push. Is it main.js or is it, was it in app.js?
So there's a code push that this was.
There's the code push we had. I wanted to point him to the one that's actually already in the app.
Let's look.
We'll do a universal search. So while he's searching for that, the cool thing is that this SenchaCon app, right, the one that you've all been using for the last 3 days, it has had code push installed on it the whole time. You guys didn't know it, but updates were being delivered. What it was doing is every single time you either resumed your app or you started your app up for the first time, it was doing a check to Azure, and it was looking for an update. And when it found that update, it was downloading it in the background. And when it was downloading in the background, it just stayed there silently until the next time you resumed that app, and it updated it silently then. So you guys, this whole time, have been getting app updates, but it's completely invisible to you as a user.
And so we added this pivot grid, which is the premium component in the mobile application.
Yeah.
And it has the list of all the companies sending their people to different sessions within SenchaCon.
Awesome. All right. So let's bring it back to the slide deck here. All right. So, in the last 50 minutes or so, we saw IntelliSense, we saw code navigation, we saw documentation lookup, we saw code generation, We saw template creation, workspace and template. We saw integration with Sencha Command, debugging, right? All of that is available today via early access. So if you haven't already visited it, there's the link for you to go grab it. I strongly encourage you to do it. It's a super quick download for both VS Code and for the plugin itself. And I love it if you guys would follow Sandeep and I on Twitter, geek out with us, ask questions, help build a community, right? So with that, I think time is up. I would love to talk with you guys some more, have some other questions if you've been saving them to the end. I know I asked you to, we got one over here. Oh, okay. So the question was, how does this kind of jibe with VS Taco? Those of you that aren't familiar with it, Taco is our sort of adorable little acronym for Tools for Apache Cordova. Because again, I'm a 13-year-old girl and love to make ridiculous jokes out of everything. The Tools for Apache Cordova is a suite of products that work with Visual Studio, VS Code, and then there's some command line utilities as well that make Cordova development just better, more productive. So this fits right in kind of the sweet spot with Taco. I think that I view the Sencha extension as being kind of optimized and specific for your XJS developer, but Code Push is part of the Taco family. Excuse me.
Just talk about, in addition to the IDE that we saw here, what other pieces have you done to be able to do what you showed today? For example, you probably have a Cordova account.
Yeah, so the only thing that we didn't show installing the Sencha extension, right? But that's an obvious one. For the Code Push account, there is a sign-up step for that. It's basically just like create an email address and password. The Code Push service is a completely free service, and it's a standalone service. It's not tied to necessarily anything else. So you would have to create your Code Push account, and then we did not show creating a deployment key. You need to essentially create a bond of trust between your application and all of the devices that are out there. And so creating a deployment key is an extra step that's created on a per app basis. And you probably also want different deployment keys for different deployment environments, like staging, production, test, and the like. All of that documentation can be found at codepush.tools.
Yeah, so for this demo, we created our own deployment key. If we had used the production deployment key, then all your apps would have been updated with this pivot grid.
I wanted to update the live one, but they wouldn't let me.
But we say we are an enterprise company. We don't do that live.
Yeah. I know, all my fun, man. Okay, so we are completely out of time. I would still love to geek out with you guys. Let's talk out in the hallway. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your time here. May you all win at the blackjack table or wherever it is.
And again, thanks for coming to Sencha.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.